So we'll be covering debugging as well as working with the non-visual channel of the agent class. So somewhere around here, I've got something already open. Oh, I've downloaded it, but I haven't opened it yet. So let me go find my downloads. Oh, it's probably sitting right there. All right. The page that we're going to work with today is kind of an interesting one. It's called economagic, economagic.com. Popular. I don't know if I'm looking for a popular one. Seems like the one I was looking for, personal income in current dollars. That sounds like a pretty good data set to work with. The whole idea behind the guys at economagic is, they want you to come and look at a bunch of advertisements and they'll give you some free data that, they didn't make up. They just got it from some government source. But they're putting this all in a place that you can come and look at it, and it's here and available. So what was the one I was interested in? Personal income in current dollars. Personal income in current dollars. That's the one I was thinking of, but let's take a look at that one. Might have to get off the popular page and get back to the whole page. See where we're going. Might have to go somewhere else. This whole page slow down just because you guys got on it? I don't know. That's too slow. Don't be slow. There's only like 80 of you here. What kind of website can't handle 80 concurrent requests? I don't know. Are you all as slow as I am, or is it just me? It's just you. Let's see. All right, so I'm getting off that popular one. I'm coming just back to economagic.com. And Department of Labor, PEA. This is the one I was interested in. State personal income per capita and population. We find that page. BEA, Bureau of something something. I don't know what BA stands for. State personal income. That's the one I want to take a look at. That'll bring us to an index page, and ultimately I'll want to get to the one that's for the state of Utah. Really distressing how slow this is. That can't be their server being that slow. Is it just our wireless connection? I got to get a wired adapter. At least I could wire in. Okay, so this page doesn't actually give us the data, but it just gives us links to different parts of the data. So personal income quarterly. I don't really want quarterly. Population quarterly. Per capita quarterly. Is this all quarterly? Personal income. Column 3 is personal income per capita. Looks like column 4 is the one I want. So it's kind of a strange page layout. But I should be able to scroll down and find the state of Utah somewhere down here. QRS. So here's Utah. And then I think column 4 has the data set that I'm interested in. So I'll click on that, and that should give me the raw data that's behind this graph. Yeah, this is the stuff. It really does say that in 1929, the average personal income, per capita income, was $548. I mean, that's what you made in a year on average in the state of Utah in 1929. If we go back to to kind of more recent numbers, here's 2014, because that's the most recent number. $37,000 is the average per capita was the per capita income. So I'm really interested in bringing in this data right here. But look what happens if I try to copy it. Let me just kind of copy some of this data out. I'll just copy the 1929 data. And I'll bring it over here to Excel. Looks like things crashed lately. Enable editing, that looks great. I don't know what I got going here on page 1, but I'm just going to paste in what I copied that. What was it, 1929? I copied 1929, $548. Let me paste it in here. And what does it tell me that data is? Well, in terms of the type that comes in, I'm going to paste it into the cell, so I just get the data. And yeah, I think it merged the two cells, but that's just because I pasted it before I had one cell. Okay, so there's 1929, and it's like the 1 means this is like the first quarter, but it's not first quarter. It's just I'm not sure even what they mean by the 1 here. Typically, if you have data by quarters, that's showing the quarter at that point. But what's this? What's that number? Where'd that number come from? 37548. What's the number? The number is 548. Where did the 37 come from? In fact, I'm wondering if you all have the same number. Did anyone do that along with me? Is there anyone who did that along with me, copied that number and pasted it and got something different than 37? Oh, wait a minute. There it is. What's going on here? What is that 37 doing there? Do you see the 37? Someone got 65, someone got 78. What is it? First of all, what was the per capita income for the state of Utah in 1929? Was it $37,000, 548? Or was it 548? What do you think? It was 1929, for crying out loud. I mean, it's the Great Depression. And it got worse, as you can see. We got less and less. Okay, so any thoughts? Yeah. Okay, so one thought is, well, you know, back in the 1920s, $548 went a lot further. Maybe this is like some kind of adjusted to today's dollars. No, not it. Not a bad thought, though. I mean, that's good. Really? We can't figure this one out? Yeah, in the back. That's exactly what it is. They just said, you know what? We don't want just any old person to come in here and be able, we'll give this data away for free to human eyes. But we don't want someone to come and copy and paste this. I mean, it took us a lot to format this page. We had to copy the data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics and put it over here. And in fact, they're probably going to sell you access to the whole data somewhere. Somewhere they're going to say, you know what, if you really want this data, we'll sell it to you. I mean, it's like government data, but they'll sell it to us anyway. I'm not even sure where it is. Do you see something here that says you can buy this stuff? Change, default, numeric. Oh, there's something that says subscriber. Anyway. So that's exactly what they're doing. They're saying, we're going to show this to you so when you look at this, you can see that's really the number. But if you're going to copy this out and do some analysis, you're going to pay for it. Do you see it? It's just, so how, by the way, any thoughts on how they're what's the technological technique they're using to accomplish that? Okay, they're randomly generating some numbers when we make the request, but how is it, why is it that it shows when it's highlighted and not when it's not highlighted?
Like in the HTML or something like highlighted, because isn't it like if you hover, it's like hover and then change.
Let's take a look. I'm gonna just control U, I guess, to take a look at this data. And let me see if I can find it here. Here's the first one, 548, 1929. And look what they're doing here. They just have a tag that's, the font color is white, and we're putting a 37 in white. And so when you highlight it, it goes, you know, it kind of ignores the color and just shows you what it is highlighted. And so that's why it shows it. So they're specifically saying, here's this data, don't copy it. Is it against the rules to copy it? I mean, is it against the law for us to copy this? No, it's government data. It's a fact. You know, they don't own a copyright to this data. They're just saying we want to make this inconvenient for you to copy so that if you don't know so much about VBA, you'll pay us to get the data.
So I'm just curious. My numbers are different. How are they generating random numbers?
Oh, so you're saying your 548 is the same, but your 37 is different?
Yeah, I've got 93.
Yeah. So the question is, how are they doing that? And the answer is, this is not just a static page that gets served. When we make that request, they're pulling this data in from a database where they have these numbers listed, and then part of the script that generates that page is just saying, give me a random number and plop it in here. So it's the page is generated dynamically each time it's served. Yep. As you may have guessed, we can get around this. And that's what we're going to do here in VBA. So. And again, this is something that we would not be able to do with the web query wizard. If we brought this data in with the web query wizard, what would happen to that 37? Is it coming in or is it not coming in? Yeah, it's coming in. We'll lose the tags, and so the numbers will run together, and we won't have any idea which is the real data. But if we're looking at the source, we can do that. So our goal today is to be able to write a program that will actually pull the real numbers off of this page, But in so doing, I mean, it's just that's a context, right? That's just the background for looking at dealing with debugging, the different tools that we have for debugging our code. Okay, we see where we're headed. Let's go there now. So I've got this page, this URL. I'm going to begin working with this URL. Depending on how far we get, we may make this more general. So instead of just having Utah, we can go get all of the states for this data. We'll just see how it goes as we get there. So I'm going to open up my code window. I have, let me go ahead and view my, what's it called? Oh, Project Explorer. So remember that when I download this agent.xlsm, looks like I called it agent 1, that's great, that it has the agent class built into it. I'm not going to work in that agent class because that's the definition of the object, the definition of the class of objects. So instead I'm going to insert a new module, and then I will work inside this new module. Get income data. New sub-procedure. Full credit for class participation if someone can tell me how to declare and instantiate the agent class. What does it take here? I want to create a variable that I can use to refer to that object and then be able to create the object. Go ahead. Dim A as agent. So far, so good. That's correct. So I declare A as a variable of type agent. It allocates just enough memory to be able to hook up to an agent class. It's just to hold enough memory to record the location of this object in memory, so a memory address. And then the new agent is the part that makes it. Folks, I'm going to show you a shortcut here. I can do both of these lines in one step just by sliding in the word new right here. And then I don't need to say this set line at all. So by saying dim A as new agent, it does both of these at the same time. Allocates some memory, creates the object, binds that variable onto that object. All right, so in our past examples, kind of the next thing that we did was we said, let's make this thing visible. Now we're going to work with the non-visual channel of the agent. And so we're not going to be using Internet Explorer this time. We're going to be using another object that Microsoft has made. It's called the MS XML Http Object. It's a great name. But it's not visual. First of all, can we work with Internet Explorer in a non-visual way? Yeah, just don't ever make it visible. But we're still using the Internet Explorer object. It's slow. And one, we can't make it visible even if we wanted to, but it's going to be pretty peppy. Depending on how the website we're working with is. So I'm just going to say a.openPage, and I'll give it the URL that I want to open. Now, in prior example, we would say comma true for the use IE parameter. We're not going to do that this time. We can put comma false if we want to, but false is the default value, so we can not even put comma anything and it'll still be false. And so that should get that page. I'm going to put a breakpoint on my end sub so it's still, so when I run this, it doesn't run past the end of the procedure. And I should now have the source from that page in my agent class. If I was to print a.html or a.text, sorry, it should show that I've got some HTML text. I got some HTML in that text property. Of course, my immediate window only takes 200, can only handle 200 lines, and the file's more than 200 lines long, so I can't see the whole thing here. So what am I get full credit for class participation? If I want to see that text, what do I do? I'll get you started. Anyone need credit still? Show source will take the HTML that's sitting in the agent, write it to a local file, point your default browser at that file to be able to show that file, which will make it easy to get to the source. So you'll notice this is on the local file. And here if I say Control U or right click and say view source or something, view page source, then I'll be able to get to the source. So again, this is what I'm working with. And we're trying to just isolate it down to the numeric data. There's all kinds of data on this page. There's advertisements. There's all these links to other places to pull more data from. There's a link to play Legends of Honor. Oh boy, I could go play Legends of Honor today. But I'm after just the text, so that's what we're doing. Any thoughts? Looking at this source, what is it about this page that would let me find just that text? How, what's unique? When we worked with the page from Eventbrite last week, they really had some nice, they were using different styles, different classes of tags for the different parts of the page. It made it really easy to find. There's nothing like that here. Any thoughts? I'm looking at this one, name equals data. That one looks pretty good to me. It's not the one we're ultimately going to use. Yeah?
What's to stop you from just like copying the whole line? Yeah. Exactly the same as I want. Or could you just copy a whole line and say that to you?
So the question is, can we just copy this whole line and say, maybe that's going to be unique? Just search for this. I don't know. Control FV, there's only one of these. So yeah, that's pretty good. We could probably do that. But then I have to look at this and say, not only does it have to be unique for this page, but it has to be unique for this page and similar for the rest of the pages that I want to get. So right now, I'm looking at the data for Utah. Ultimately, I'm probably going to want to get this stuff for West Virginia and California and Minnesota and Louisiana and whoever. And so, yeah, I want to look at this and say, something that's going to be the same across pages. How do I know if it's going to be the same across pages, for crying out loud? Probably go look at a few of those pages and see. But the fact is, you'll get familiar with, what's going to be unique, what's part of the data, what's part of the structure of the page. And then so you make a guess at it your first time, and then if it doesn't quite work when you try to extend it out over multiple data sets, then you go and modify it. Now it turns out there's a great tag here called pre. It stands for pre-formatted text. And what pre-formatted text is it's this stuff that looks like it's done with a typewriter, where all the characters are the same width. So you don't notice it so much on numbers. And these are all numbers that we're seeing that's pre-formatted. So, but this pre-formatted text basically gives you, it says, how do we explain it? Typically in HTML, if I've got 12 spaces next to each other in my source, and I say show this as HTML, the browser sucks those spaces out and just makes them one space. If I've got even vertical space, the browser collapses all that down to a single space. Even vertical space gets collapsed to a single space character. Unless it's in a pre-tag. Pre-formatted text says, listen, I'm going to space this out using spaces and enters and just show it the way that it's formatted. And it turns out that tag then starts with pre and ends with /pre, but let me just check this. So there's what I'm looking for. Yeah, there's only one occurrence of that. And let's just check where the ending of that tag is, /pre. And there it is, right after the 2014 data. So, yeah, that's nice. The only place that they have the data is inside this pre-tag. So we're going to use that pre-tag to narrow this page down just to the data that we're dealing with at this point. Questions on this pre-tag? Just means pre-formatted text, and it happens to be a convenient one for us to use here. All right, so I'll set the position of my agent equal to 1, set it up to the top, and then I'm going to say a.move to pre. And that should get me to that location. I'm going to go ahead and check to make sure that those do what I think they're going to do. I'll take a look at what my position is. Yeah, so it is found, I set it to 1, I moved to it, and now it's adjusted the position to 5,616 characters in. So it's moved me to that location. I could think of myself as now sitting right exactly here. Whoops. Here inside my, I lost the pre-tag. Sitting right here, right after that pre-tag. And I've got some things that I don't want in here, but this looks pretty good. I have just this data. So far, so good. All right. Now, I'm ready to kind of say what's the end of the data that I want. So let's go ahead and do this. Have we worked with two agents simultaneously before? I don't think we have. So let's go ahead and do that. It's a nice little trick. Let me dim B as a new agent. And I'm going to move A to this location, and then I'm going to say, you know what? I want another agent that's just going to deal with that portion of the page. A's got the whole page in it, and now I'm going to want B just to have the portion that's inside the pre-tag. So B.text equals A.getText. Remember, getText says from wherever the current position is until the next occurrence of whatever tag I give it, return all that text. So that'll be until the slash pre-tag. And I'll set the position of my B agent equal to the top of the file. So I've already, by the way, so this is a debugging trick that I've used quite a bit in this course. We've never really talked about it. So remember that when you're in break mode, oh yeah, I've done a couple of things. One, putting a breakpoint. This is a debugging trick. It stops my code from executing at that point, right? And so when I run this, it'll get to there and stop. So before it executes the end sub, before it finishes the sub procedure, it takes me into break mode. Break mode is like halfway in between running and design mode. So when I'm in design mode, nothing's loaded into memory, it's just all specified. When I run it, the whole thing's running into memory, and when it finishes running, it's out and done. Break mode says, all right, get partway through and stop. Well, don't really stop. I guess you're stopping. Just pause. Just waiting here. So everything is still loaded in memory. That's what breakpoint is. What break mode is, and a breakpoint takes me into break mode. So now, when I'm in break mode, one of the great things about VBA is that I can just drag the current statement indicator forwards or backwards to say, you know what? Go back and redo this part, or skip over this part and continue on at this location. It's a fabulous feature. There are not many languages that let you do that. So I'm just going to drag my current statement indicator back up here to where I say b.text equals its value, and I can continue running the code from here just by clicking on the play or by pressing F5. So I should be able now to ask what B's text is, and we'll see that it's just the text that was between the pre-tags in the full document. So I'm saying I might want that full document for something else, and so I'm going to leave it there, but I'm going to open up another copy of the agent and just push the data right into the text property. Now, so far, the only way we've put data into an agent was by telling it to go to a web page. And when we go to a web page, the text from that page goes into the text property. But it's a read-write property, so we can put text into it ourselves, which is exactly what I'm doing here. So instead of navigating to a page to get the text, I'm just saying, here's the text I want you to work with. How are we doing, folks? We're okay? All right. So now we've got the data looking like this. It's still pretty ugly. We've got to look at a line like this and get it to say 1935. Yeah, $1,935. That's what we've got to get it to say. Oh, we've got to also get it to say 1957, and well, this one is meaningless to us, but we'll probably keep the one around anyway. Any thoughts on what we've got to do here? Yeah, go ahead.
It won't be totally great, but you can just do the search for any number from 0 to 9, extract everything to 0, and it'll have the random numbers included.
Yeah. So that's the thing. Let's find one that's got random numbers on it. They don't all have it. Well, this one has a 1 inside the. Oh, here, let's look at this one right here. So this one has only one white font tag, and it's got a 12 inside of it. So you're right, we did something similar to this where we said, look, let's just pull out the numbers, right? We did a numbers only function. Numbers only would be great, except that gives us this 12 as well. And so really, what they're doing on this site is they're saying, we want the 12 to be there, but we want it to be white. And so we could come and look at this line and say, look, just find a tag that says font color equals white, and then from there, move to the end of this font tag, and ignore that part. So pull in the stuff up to that point, move past the part that's in the font, and bring it back. So let's go ahead and create a function that will do that for us. We'll just call it remove white. No one's last name is White in here, is it? You don't have to remove you. You could stay if your last name's White, but we're going to make a function that removes data that's in the white tag. Now, to be able to create a new function, I can't be in break mode, so I'm going to go ahead and hit stop. But if I was in break mode and I said let's make a new function, function, remove white. As soon as I tried to leave this line, it would say, oh, you got to reset your program. That's okay. Yeah, reset the program. Now, here's what I want to do. I want to make a function so that I can just pass one of these rows down to the function, let the function do the heavy lifting, and pass me back the cleaned value. So I'm going to, what should we call it here? Data. I'm going to send down a value of data as a string, and I'm going to get back a string. So the whole idea behind this function is I should be able to pass it something like this and have it give me back exactly what's here without these tags and without what was ever in the white font. Whew. We'll use another agent for this. I'll just call it C. First of all, I could call it A or B. That would be just fine because it's in a different sub-procedure. Not going to step on each other's toes. Just so we've got it painfully clear it's different, I'll call it C. Dim C as a new agent. C.text equals data, whatever we passed in. Ultimately, my call is going to look something like this. It's called remove white. Let's see, Alt-Enter, Control-Enter. So I'm going to call remove white. I'm going to send it down some string. It probably won't be a string literal in my code, but I'm going to send it down some collection of characters, and it's going to send me back everything besides what's inside the white font tag. All right. So this value that I'm passing down gets read into the variable data, this parameter data, and I'm just going to use that to plop it into the text property. I will set my position to 1. And I better get a temporary variable here just to hold the different parts of this that I'm going to, because I'm going to have different parts I've got to deal with. All right, so if this is what I'm starting with, I want to keep everything up until where it says font color equals white. So that's what I'm using temp for. Temp is going to hold the parts of this string that I'm keeping. So temp equals, I'll be right with you. So temp equals c.getText up to my tag. And it looks like, from looking at the source here, it looks like they're not doing anything with this font tag. They're not changing the capitalization of it or the spacing. It looks really uniform. So I'm just going to, at this point, assume that it's going to be uniform. Temp equals everything up to where it says font color equals white. Question?
I was just going to say the C dot position 1 is just to get us to the beginning of that string that we have.
Yeah, this is just to make sure that we're starting at the beginning of the string. So we are reading in whatever gets passed to us inside this data variable. We're going to put that into the property of the agent, and then we're going to set position 1, which just says make sure we're starting at the very front. Now, the default's 1. Yeah, the default's 1. If we didn't put this in, it would behave exactly the same. The reason I'm putting it here is that it's really common that while I'm debugging and working on this, I'll want to be able to pull myself back and say, okay, I know I just searched for something, but take me back to the top. And so having that in the code is really nice, just to be able to drag my current position indicator to it, or my next statement indicator to it, and re-execute it. Question?
How come we need to use agents in this
good question. So why do we have to use the agent here? Why couldn't we just use this, manipulate this as a string? And the answer is we could manipulate this as a string. So why do we use the agent? Because we already have functions in the agent that are going to make this a lot easier than just working with a string. So what we would have to do is we have to find the position of this, and then we have to take the left of this string up to the position, and then we've got to search for where this is, but it has to be, that would probably be okay. We could probably search for that from the beginning, so find the position of that, find where it ends, and so a lot of that kind of busy work has been taken care of in the agent class. So question over here? Okay, so yeah, oh, a question here.
Some of the lines have two font colors blue white. Does that affect
So, question here is some of the lines have two font color equals white. That was the first part of the question. That was the statement before the question. What was the question?
does that affect how the get text function works if there's two?
Does it affect how get text works? And the answer is no. It will find the first occurrence. And so we're currently working with one that is, there's only one. And so if I were to send this one down, it would find this one. Then we've got to decide, well, how do we want to handle the possibility of there being another one? We'll have to think about that. So the point is that getText is going to find the first occurrence from wherever we've set the position. Okay. So far so good. The whole point was I want to get you familiar with some new debugging tools. All right, so I'm going to put our remove white function on pause right there, and I want to get to where we can call that function from inside of our main subprocedure here, our get income data subprocedure. So we've got, this is what we've got sitting in our B agent. And what I really want to do is I want to isolate those down to one line at a time. Any thoughts on how I might be able to do it? So I've got this whole big block, and I want to say, I want to deal with these one line at a time, and look at the one line and say, is that one I got to deal with? Is this one I have to deal with? And so forth. Any thoughts on how to do it? Okay, if this were a text file, I would have line input. In fact, I could write this out to a file, read it, open it using that way, and then I could use the line input function. There's other ways to do it that are a little less overhead intensive. So, but the way the line input works is it looks for that carriage return sequence. You don't remember what the carriage, there's a two character carriage return sequence, a sequence that marks the end of the line. Do you know what it is? 34 is a quote, 32 is a space, we're getting lower. It's down around character number 13 and number 10. And so that's what the input statement is, the line input statement is using. Well, we'll just use that same knowledge to do it ourselves. So let's do that. So we've got here, we've set, I wanted to set B's position to 1, not A's, B's position to 1. So at this point in our main procedure, our get income data, we've got our B agent set up and configured. Now I want to write a loop that will execute once for every different line that we have there in B. So let me just set this up as a loop, do and loop. Now inside of this, I want to pull in that first line. So I'm going to create another variable just to hold that. So I'll dim one line as a string. And here I'll say one line equals b.getText and we want to get the text up to that character sequence, character number 13, character number 10. How could you be sure that's what they were? I could never remember, is it 1310 or 1013 or is it something else? So let's take a minute and just explore that. I'm going to put a comment on this line so we can get to there, and I'm going to put a breakpoint on my do. I'll run to there. That should get my agent loaded up. B should have the data in it, and I'm ready to kind of play around with it. So what I want to do is I want to try to find out what's at the end of this first line. So let me just look at the mid of b.text. I don't know, start at the 100th character in, start at the 80th character in, and take the next 100 characters. I'm just trying to narrow down what I'm looking at here. Okay, good. So I've got a line break in here. I can see where I've got part of this line ends, the next one starts here. 80 was maybe not far as I should have gone, so I need to go this many more. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. That's a lot to count, so I'll just ask for the length of that string. You can't undo in the immediate window, unfortunately. That's gone. It's all right. I can do it. I can get it again. That's 68. So 80 plus 68 is like an 8 there, and 148. And let me just bring in like the next 10 characters now. I know I'm getting closer. Yeah, good. So it looks like I'm right on the right one. So now I'll just bring the next one character, but I want to, instead of just printing the character, because it's a non-printable character, you can't see it. So instead I'm going to ask ASCII value of it. And that tells me, in fact, that that character right there at the end of that line is number 13. Let me look for the next one. That's number 10, and that's the sequence. It's 13, character 13, followed by character number 10.
Are they both carriage return?
One's a carriage return and one's a line feed. I can never remember which one's which. So carriage return was the original signal that said move the carriage, move the print head back, and line feed was the one that said advance the paper. Even though there's no print head or paper involved here, that's still what they're called, and we still use them to say end of the line. Okay, so I'm going to say one line equals b.getText right up to that next sequence. Well, folks, the opposite side of the ASC function is a CHR function, so I could print CHR 65, and that would print a capital A if I don't have any syntax errors. Or I could print CHR number 13, and that will print at carriage return, and so forth. But carriage return concatenated with line feed. And I'm going to ask if that equals, there's a built-in constant for this called VB new line. That's true. There's a constant that is this expression, character number 13 followed by character number 10. And it reads a lot better in my code to say, oh, VB new line, that's the end of line sequence. So I'm going to say that one line equals get text up to VB new line. So that should get everything up to that new line. And it'll bring back that line, and the next line, and the next line, until it gets to the very end. By the way, what does get text return if it can't find what you told it to look for? Any thoughts? Is it going to give an error? Let me do b.getText and look for something that's not in that file. I don't think the Gettysburg Address is in this file anywhere. And so this is going to try to return all the text from the current position, which is probably 1, until it finds this. It's not going to find this. What does it return? And the answer is it returns a zero-length string. So that's how I know that the move to, or that the get text was unsuccessful. It returns a zero-length string. So I'm going to loop until one line is equal to a zero-length string. UNTIL. Turns out that the clause can happen either at the do or at the loop. And in fact, the do and the loop, they look like they're a really long ways away from each other, but they're right next to each other. Because what happens after do? After do, I go right back up to, after the loop, I go right back up to do. And so the only difference between putting the exit clause on the loop instead of the do is what? There's only one difference. well, I mean, it's one line of code, but in terms of how it executes, the only difference is if I put the clause down here, all the code that's inside the loop is going to execute once for sure, because it never checks to see if it's going to get out until it gets to the loop. And so you're guaranteed to get one run through the loop if you put the exit clause at the end. All right. Let me go ahead and do a debug.print of one line here, and then we should be ready to do some debugging, because it's not going to behave how I think it should. Debug.print one line. All right, I'll come down here at the bottom of my window, give myself some space, and I'm ready to run that. Let's see what it does. Hey, I must not have been at the right position, so I'll come back here to where position is 1, and I'll run it from there. What's it printing? Why isn't it printing anything? No. That wasn't expected. Hold on a second. Oh, that's like a clue. All right, I have nothing in my immediate window. My immediate window is completely empty. I'm going to run this, and it's still completely empty. It did not print anything. Seems like it should print something. Let's make sure that B is what I think it is. Yeah, the data's still there in b.text. And we already tracked down to make sure that we knew that we had carriage return sequences here at the end. We've got an end-of-line sequence here. What am I going to do? How am I going to debug this? So like, what's like my first tool for this? It's going to be stepping. So I'll come to the debug menu, and I've got step. So because I'm not calling any well, I am. I'm calling sub-procedures. Let's go ahead and let's do a step into. It's the simplest one. I just press F8 to do it. And let's take a look at it. So F8 says execute that line. Oh. What did it do? Good heavens. Yeah, see, to be able to find out what b.position is, it's got to go run something in the agent. So by pressing F8, it actually goes and runs something in here. This is actually where it's setting the value of the property in the agent. So step into says, hey, if you're running some other VBA code on this line, go do it, line at a time. So step into is actually the one I almost never want to do step into. The one I want is the next one, step over, Shift F8. It's too bad it's two keystrokes for that one. But Shift F8 says, look, just run that whole line, and if it calls other procedures, go just execute them. And did I say this is called step over? Yeah. So it seems like a strange thing, because am I stepping over it? Stepping over sounds like I'm not going to do it. But it does the whole thing. It just doesn't let you go step at a time. Executes the whole line. Okay, so I'm going to Shift F8. I'm going to come into here. One line equals something. Oh, I'm printing it. So it looks like it was printing something. I'm printing a blank line. Oh, wait a minute. What did it just print? So I'm wondering what one line is. I can hover over it and look at it. I can come up here and say, print one line. Might want to ask for the ASCII value of it. By the way, if you ask for the ASCII value and there's more than one character, it only gives you the ASCII value of the first character. And I didn't expect an error there. One line. Invalid procedure call. Maybe it doesn't. The left one of one line. The left of one line, one character. All right, so what's the length of one line? Aha! So probably the strongest debugging tool that I have is, the ability to come and kind of probe things in the immediate window. So while things are set here in break mode, I'm realizing my one-line variable here has nothing in it. What does that mean? Well, it means I'm not reading in the way I expected to read it in. What does this get text do? It brings in all the characters from where the current possession indicator is until the next new line. So let's find out where the first new line character is in b.text. So right here, come into my immediate window. I'm going to print. How do I find that? How do I find the first occurrence of that new line character? What function is it going to be? I want to look inside a string for another string. In string, start at the first character and look for the carriage return. VB new, look, oh, let's see. Start at, oh, I have to tell what I'm looking in. I'm looking in b.text. All right, what's it telling me? Where does it find the carriage return sequence? Yeah, it's the very first thing. Well, folks, if I think about what I did, I came here, I said move to the end of pre, and then I said bring the rest of this data. What's the first thing I've picked up here? Yeah, there's a carriage return right there. It's the very first thing. And so, that's just a little unfortunate. So let's just do this. Instead of looking for that, let's go ahead and, instead of setting the position equal to 1 here, let's set it to 3. Let's skip past that carriage return sequence. So, B's got that in there, but I'm going to say, you know what? Let's start not at the beginning, but a little bit down from there. So now, I should be able to run this, F5, and now that prints those lines off one at a time. So this is just extraordinarily common for debugging. You run the code, you say, that didn't do what I expected it to do. Let me go down and isolate, get myself paused, look exactly and start to test the assumptions I have about the code. And so we were able to find the problem and move on. So now I've got one line at a time. Here's what I want to do. If I'm looking at a line and it has font color equals white in it, I want to send it down to be processed by my procedure. So I've got one line sitting here, and I'll say if the in string starting at 1, looking at one line, looking for that font color equals white, if that's greater than 0, then I want to do something. What do I want to do? I want to change one line. So one line equals, and I'm going to call remove white space and pass one line down to it. It's just called remove white. Remove white and pass one line to it. Okay, so I'm going to come back up here. I'm going to set my position to 3, INSTR. And now I'm just going to go one line at a time. Shift F8, Shift F8, Shift F8. I'm going to watching to see, do I get in here? I didn't get in there, so that line didn't have it. I'm doing Shift F8 one line at a time. These first 3 lines don't have anything. Next one doesn't, apparently. So now I'm inside the if statement, and I'm ready to make the call down below. We're not finished with that remove white yet. So here then, I'm going to press to be able to go down into that one to debug it. What do? Step into, so regular old F8 will do it. And so now I'm moving down here. And we can, Shift F8, finally, temp now equals that. So what am I expecting to see here? All right, this is going to introduce us to another tool. Have we talked about this tool yet briefly? Let's take a look at it. On the View menu, we have a thing called the called the Locals window. Let's take a look at the Locals window. The Locals window says, listen, whatever variables you have defined, just show me the values of those variables. I've got a variable here called data, so that should be one that shows up. So my Locals window, so here's data, and so I can see what was passed down here. That's itty bitty. Can you see that at all? That's kind of hard to see from back there. But it just has what's currently in that value. So my locals window just shows me the values of all my variables that I currently have that are currently in scope. So that's a handy thing as well. But this works only for variables. I can't do more complex expressions. We'll see how to do more complex expressions in just a minute. So it turns out that when I'm in here in class, because my immediate window is a lot larger, I will often just come here and say I want to print that value. So I can see it here on the screen a little bit larger. But I would also like to see what temp is. So let's take a look at temp. Okay, well that's what I was expecting. So temp should equal everything from where the current position is, the beginning of that string that I sent down, up until it found this. And position at this point should be right after this. Well, we should be able to kind of count that one out. Let's see what c.position is. Yeah, that's 28. Is that right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 20, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I must not have quite got it all the way. Anyway, it should have us right here. That's where the 28th character is. Now, do I want this 79? So what's the next step that I want to do here? Yeah, I just want to advance my current position indicator past this font. Now, I'm a little troubled that we've got spaces here at the end of this font. So looking at that, are they always the same number of spaces? They're not. Sometimes they're more, and sometimes they're less. And so I don't have the luxury of saying I just want to move to the next occurrence of this font tag. So what could I reliably move to advance past that thing?
Could you move twice from the end of the T and then move to the next?
Could I move to the next T and then move to the next bracket? The answer is yes. There's a simpler way. Just move to the bracket. Yeah, that's the next bracket. And as long as they haven't put some other kind of tags in here that I would accidentally bump into, that'll be okay. The fact that this is pre-formatted text makes me feel pretty good about there not being another tag in there, but it's a little bit risky. So it might be a little safer to say move to the font and then move to the tag. That will let us skip by that. But let's just go ahead and move to the closing tag. So c.move to, and I'll move to that closing tag. That's going to get me past the end of that first font, and I'm just going to say, look, let's just go ahead and bring the rest of it on. And so I'll set the value of the return function by saying remove white space is equal to temp concatenated with c dot, what's that? Oh yeah, it shouldn't say move back to. Thanks, that's just a autofill problem. Move to. All right, how do I tell it I want to get the rest of the string? So get text would work, but I've got to have some character that I'm getting it up to, and there's no character. I want the whole rest of it. There's nothing to say get it up until that next occurrence. There's some tricks I could do. Here's one of them. I could say get c.get text. I have to change what was in the text. I have to put something on the end of the text and then get text up to that. That's kind of a kludgy way to do it. Let's just use the mid function. Mid looking at c.text, starting at c.position. So position should be where my current position indicator is. I'm looking at the text that's there, and that should bring me out everything else. Folks, if I was curious of what that would mean, then I can, or if this was something I wanted to watch, then I can highlight that whole expression now, and I can right-click it, and I can say Add Watch. So here's a kind of debugging tool we haven't seen before. The locals window lets me see the values of a variable, but a watch expression lets me see the value of any expression. So I'll say add watch, and it will bring that in, and I'll say OK. And so now I have a watches window similar to my locals window, but it just shows me, you zoom in here. Ooh, that's a magnifier. So this just shows me, hey, what do I have here? I've got a magnifying glass in the way. The expression I'm looking at is here, the value is here, and some other stuff, like the scope and what data type it is. All right, so what does that mean? That's not quite what I expected. What does that mean? I was expecting to see just this 548. That must mean that I haven't executed that next move too. Okay, so let me go ahead and execute that line. I'll move to this, and then you'll notice that my watch window has automatically updated to show what that currently shows based on the way everything else is. So you can set these watch expressions up and just have them sitting off to the side, and always take a peek and see what they evaluate to. Questions on the watch window? The way I got to the watch window was I highlighted an expression. I got to get out of my magnifier. I highlighted the expression that I wanted to watch, and I just right-click and said Add Watch. Also, on your debug menu, there's an Add Watch statement here, and that does the same thing. Okay, so that should set remove white space equal to whatever I had here, having now gotten rid of that first tag. Now, someone pointed out we could have more than one tag. That's okay. This is just going to get rid of the first one. All right, so now let me go ahead and clear this out and set this to run again. And I've now finished off printing the rest of that. So now I don't have lines with two fonts white, but just one. But you can see that I've narrowed this down quite a bit. Questions? All right, any thoughts on how I'm going to get rid of that second white space? Give me an algorithm. What would I do to get rid of that second white space tag? Yeah, so that's actually that's a slick way to do it. The first tempting thing to do is to put some kind of loop down here that says, well, let's check to see if that's gone and get rid of it here. But I'm already checking to see what's there in the first place. Let me just change this if statement to a do statement. Let me do until I can't find font white. Yeah, I'll get there. Thanks. So do until the in string looking for that font tag is equal to 0. Then instead of end if, I'll say loop. So it'll find the first one. If there's still another one, it'll do it again, and it will keep doing it until it's gotten rid of all of them. So that's great. If we think there's probably only at most 2, but who knows? They might put 3 sometimes, just to mess with us. I'll come back here, set this to position 3, execute that code again. And we can see that I'm feeling pretty good about here. We've gotten rid of all those tags. Any thoughts on what this ampersand pound 183 is? I can tell you this. In HTML, when you see an ampersand, a bunch of other stuff, and then a semicolon, then that's an encoded character. And so this is really character number 183 encoded for HTML. Well, what's character number 183? Well, we can ask it. 183. It's a dot that looks kind of like a period. So that's what they're doing with that data, is they're saying, Yeah, we're not going to, whoops, come back up here to position equals 3. We're going to put some extra numbers in there, and we're going to give you some fake periods. That's not even a period. It's some higher character that looks like a period. So what do we want to do with all that sequence? Let's just replace it. In fact, we could replace that. Now we'll do it right after here. So we've gone through the loop. Now let's replace that. One line equals replace. Look at one line. Look for something. Replace it with something. What am I looking for? I'm looking for character number 183. And replacing it with a zero-length string. Come back here and execute that again. Whoops. On line, one line. Uh-oh. Oh, yeah. I'm not searching for character 183. I'm searching for that string. The HTML encoding of character 183. Thank you. And now I've gotten rid of all of those. Ooh. Questions?
Get rid of the periods too, or does that not matter?
Well, those periods are, actually I probably should change those to be periods. I shouldn't just get rid of them, I should change them to periods. Because they're sliding it in there where a period belongs. And at least for this page, it looks like everything's rounded to whole dollars, but that may not always be the case in this data set. And so that really is a fake period, so I probably should replace it with a period. Yep. So in case I've got something after the decimal place somewhere, I'll still be dealing with that. All right. Let's go ahead and do this. Let me check and see. I'm not sure if I have a leading space on this or not. Kind of looks like there might be something at the beginning here. So I'm going to put a breakpoint right here on my one line. And let's just run to that point. I'm going to get a few of these out here, so I'm working with a number. So, all right, so I'm curious to know, what do I have here on the beginning of this number? So one line, I'm going to use the mid of one line, starting at the first character, taking one character. There's something there. Let me ask what the ASCII value of it is. It's character number 32. So it looks like it's got a leading space. So I think I want to trim that. So right here where I'm doing one line, I'm doing this replace. I'll go ahead and throw a trim on the front of this. That should get rid of all those leading spaces. And it sure seems like it should. Oh, it's because I'm breaking just before that. I'm going to break after it. There we go. So now the first character is character number 49. Anything above 32 is going to be printable, so I'm past that 32. So here's what I'd like to do. I would like to teach you a thing called a conditional breakpoint. So far, the only breakpoint we've used is where I set the breakpoint in code. I mean, I actually put it right here. There's a couple other ways to do a breakpoint. One is to write the VBA statement. You can actually write a VBA statement that makes a breakpoint. It's right here. It's called stop. So if I put the keyword stop in and get rid of that, the breakpoint, I still have a breakpoint, but it's a breakpoint written in code. So it'll still take me to break when it hits that line. So I can write the breakpoint in code. That's kind of handy. But there's a thing called a conditional breakpoint. And so what I'd like to do is I'd like to get to some of this data here that's not numeric. In fact, anytime I'm looking at, kind of everything up to that first space and it's not numeric, I'd like to, kind of know, when does that happen? run through all the code, and whenever that happens, whenever that occurrence happens where there's the first stuff is not numeric, then that's when I want to break. So far we've always said at this point in the code we want to break. Now I'm going to say, I don't know where it's going to happen, but if this condition ever becomes true, that's when I want to break. Stop me there and let me see what's going on. And so to do that, I've got to get some expression that lets me look at that first number. Well, here's what we'll do it. So here I'm just going to say is numeric, debug.print is numeric. I'm going to split one line on the space. One line on a space, and then I want to look at the number 0th argument. Yikes, that's kind of ugly. But let me go ahead and I'll run to here, and we'll take a look at that in code. Let me run it a few more times. So this expression right here says, look at one line, cut it up into a bunch of smaller pieces, and return the number 01, the first one. And so that tells me that's 1933. If I want to look at the number 2, or the second position, that's a 1, and the third position. So I've just split that up into smaller pieces using the space as a delimiter. And what I really want to know is I want to say, listen, if it's numeric, if it's not numeric, then I want to break. And so here's how I do that. I'm going to highlight, let me go ahead and write the whole expression out here. Not is numeric of that value. I'll highlight that, right click, and I will choose add watch. It's a different kind of watch. It really isn't a watch at all. It's what's called a conditional breakpoint, but let's take a look at it. I'll say add watch. There's the expression I want. Not is numeric of the first value of one line. And it's down here in this type. So instead of just being a watch expression, I want to break when the value is true. I can break whenever the value changes, but in this case, I want to say, listen, if I ever get a value in one line where the first block is not numeric, I want to know something about it. So I'll take this breakpoint off. I'll say, OK, I'll take off this breakpoint. I will run this back up to the top. And I'll run that, and it's now brought me into break mode because it has read in a value into one line that's not numeric in the first block. So I can continue to run that, and it will only stop at the positions where it's not numeric. Seems like that should have done it. Oh, I have a little problem here, and what is it? So let's take a look at what the first value is in my one line right here. So there's the number 0 position. What's the number 1 position? Why is it that now my number 1 position is where the number is and my number 0 position is empty? It's because I trimmed off an initial space. Right down here I trimmed off a space. That space isn't trimmed by the time we get to here. And so it's getting thrown off. So let me go ahead and take a look at my watch window again. View my watch window. And I'm going to modify this one. Instead of just splitting one line, I'm going to trim. You probably can't see this. I'm going to trim one line right here as well. So I've just modified the watch expression to take into consideration that leading space that's going to be there before I've trimmed it off down here. So let me go ahead and run this code again. Didn't mean to stop it, but I did. Okay, so it's brought me right here. I'll go ahead and run it again. We can see now it's running multiples before it gets to a place where it's breaking. Still seems like I've got some issues going on here. Subscript out of range, went too far. Okay, so that's what's called a conditional breakpoint. Questions on a conditional breakpoint? It's really handy when you say, I can tell that things are going wrong, but I don't know where they're going wrong. I can isolate the condition. I know if this ever gets to this, something's gone bad. You can set the breakpoint there and do it. Two more things really quickly, folks. One is that if you are somewhere else in your program and you want to just get to where your current position indicator is, there's a tool for that. It's called show next statement that just says, take me to where the next statement is, where my yellow line is. And then two is that you can say, you know what, maybe I just want to run until we get to a particular place where the cursor is. So I can put my cursor on a line, choose debug, and say run to cursor. Is that here? Up. Run to cursor, there it is. And so run to cursor will just say, don't worry about any breakpoints or whatever, just run until we hit that particular location. And I've got code that's no good here, so. Okay, folks, those are the main debugging tools. Questions? Yes? All the code up here or down below? Don't think I can quite show it all because it doesn't fit on the screen, but yeah, I'll work with you. Anything else? All right, folks, have a good day. I will see you the day after tomorrow. Class dismissed.